You're from inside or living outside?
Well, it is double difficult for me because most of what I was going to say is already covered by others. But I will try to avoid and to repeat those that have been said already. And it is difficult because being an Iranian, having that love for your own country at the same time, being a scholar, at the same time working for a TV channel, it makes it double difficult. But however, what I say here is my own words and my own mind, and I'm not representing the TV that I work for. The legal rights of Iran. In Iran, all of the people, doesn't matter which camp they belong, they think that it is their right to have this nuclear knowledge and energy. And as we know, Iran has signed NPT. And Iran claims that its nuclear program is civilian and peaceful and has legal right to enrich uranium. But saying that, the big powers are saying no, Iran shouldn't develop that knowledge and nuclear power plant even. Then they are talking of attacking Iran. But as a signatory to NPT, NPT itself doesn't prescribe preemptive military action, even if a nation is trying to achieve the military aspect of the nuclear energy. Iran somehow was managed, and it was all right under the IAEA former head, Egyptian al-Baradei. I think he was sort of managing the scenario in the international arena, avoiding the escalation of the problem. But as it is said under the Yuki Amano, the new head of the IAEA, in November 8, things got deteriorated. Then the crisis escalated when he said that there is strong indicators of possible weapon development by Iran, a vague phrase which hardly they have proof for. Then a common belief when I talk to my colleagues in Europe, all over the world, in the airport when I travel, all of them, they say, yes, why they are against Iran? If India and Pakistan simply has it, why not Iran? Which country was the one who used for the first time and last time the nuclear bomb against another nation, namely Japan, in Second World War? And even worse than that, Israel, which itself is believed to be holding between 200 to 300 warheads, which is estimated, and Tel Aviv never confirms nor denies. Now, the media is filled with one thing, attacking Iran, Israeli invasion of Iran, that it won't be the America, but the Israel which will attack Iran. To understand it, I have made two videos that whether Israeli attack will succeed and if Israel will manage to successfully carry out its mission of destroying the Iranian nuclear sites. Of course, Israel is not bordering Iran, and it makes it double difficult for Israel. The distance between Tel Aviv and Tehran is 1,600 kilometers. But Israel is determined to destroy all Iran's nuclear facilities. Under the Begin Doctrine, which says that Israel, under any cost, should prevent all hostile nations to achieve nuclear know-how, as they did with Iraq. In 1981, they attacked Osrak nuclear plant of Saddam Hussein, and within 90 seconds, they destroyed it. They did the same to Syria in 2007, and within 2 minutes, they destroyed Bashar Assad's as well, the installation of the Syrian regime's nuclear plants. But Iran insisting that it will not pull back from enriching the uranium. And then the man in the middle, President Ahmadinejad, with its own very controversial remarks is saying that Iran will wipe out Israel from the map. According to this Masoud, Iran will be achieving the know-how how to make a bomb by the end of this year, the current year, but CIA says that Iran can make nuclear bomb by the end of 2014. Then the choices that Israel has to attack Iran and destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. One is by airstrike. Israel has pretty one of the best air force in the world, reportedly among the best 10s in the world. So one way is just airstrike, as all of you know. But in that case, Israel is estimated to lose between 20 to 30% of its air force if it is attacking Iran. To do so, Israel has three options, three routes Israeli planes can reach Iran. One is the southern route from Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. The other one directly from Oman to via Iraq. With Jordan, Israelis have the peace treaty, so it is not very probable. And then the second one comes now via, again, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. But the best option that Israelis have, it is northern route, which is through Syria, part of Turkey, and northern Iraq. So this is most probably the route that Israelis are going to take in order to destroy Iranian facilities. But saying it is easy than done. In order to carry the mission, they need to blind the radar of the Syrians and possibly the Turks as well. They have the facilities for it, and they can do that as they did when they were attacking the nuclear plants of Syria. They do that with Gulfstream G550, which is especially designed to blind the enemy's radar. Then, after blinding the radar, they are supposed to carry their mission with F-15 and F-16 fighters. But Iran will not be an easy target. Iran already has anti-aircraft facilities, which widely discussed. I'm not going to pause much on it here. Iran has British-made, then French-made missiles, and even the one in the middle, Stingers, which reportedly Iran has obtained from black market from Afghanistan. Then Iran has its own air force, not among the top best in the world, but one with 158 fighters. Iran can also, if not destroy definitely, but pose a serious threat to the Israelis' mission. Then Iran has obtained this missile as well, SA. Russians, they didn't deliver Iran the S-300 missiles, but Iran has this one, which reportedly is adding a lot to Iran's ability to defend itself before the Israeli attack, airstrike. Then the second option is missile. Israelis are holding Jericho-3 missiles, which easily brings Tehran into its target. But that is also very not precise to carry out, because what I have understood, they say that the error that these missiles have, it is not just a matter of meters. Sometimes it can be kilometers, so they need to be precise. Then to counterattack, Iran has spread all facilities all over the Iran, which makes it really difficult for Israelis to destroy oil. But if Israelis are, let's say, focusing on 4 major sites, which Isfahan, then the most controversial one, Natanz, then Iraq, and then the fourth one, Bushehr, again, it won't be that easy option for them. The best method that they have is using the bunker buster missiles or bombs that they have obtained 600 pieces of it from USA. But again, to counterattack, what the Iranians they have done is they have taken their facilities, especially in Natanz, where they are enriching uranium, about, some reports they say 36 meters under the ground, and some reports they are saying that about 80 meters under the ground. And then they have made several layers of beton, each wall about 2.5 meters wide, several layers, and then which makes it not easy target. Then, as I said before, it is this bunker buster, 600 pieces of it, USA has provided to Israel, which is able to blast 6 meter wide beton under the ground, 13 meter or 36 meter under the ground. But then the danger is that, again, here they must be very precise, just exactly to target the exact place. And if they, in case of attacking the power plants, the one which is operating, the Bushehr one, then the human loss will be immense. Thousands of people can perish in Iran as well as in Persian Gulf Arab states. To counterattack, Iran has also its own cards. Iran can respond. Iran will not be an idle actor and player. Iran, as widely discussed, has its own missiles, namely Shahab. And as Professor Mr. Ambassador Singh said, I think it is Iran's right to develop it. You mentioned, sir, the Iran-Iraq war, during which I remember I was accompanying my sister from my hometown to Tehran as a teenager. And you mentioned the panic. Yes, even remembering it now, it is terrifying me. You see that the West is providing all type of the missiles to Saddam Hussein, and Iran virtually had nothing. So you could see the missile is coming with that horrible sound, and you couldn't expect that any moment it could fall down, and then that fear was killing. So Iran, after Iran-Iraq war, developed this missile technology, and I think, personally, I think it is really justified for Iran to develop it for its own security. And then that is the main Iranian threat. Iranian government never said that they will use chemical weapons. But again, during the 8 years war with Iraq, they got hit several times, many times indeed, by the Saddam Hussein chemical weapons. Though the Iranians, they have never claimed, but unofficially somehow it has been said that Iran will target the Tel Aviv with chemical weapons. Tel Aviv is the capital of Israel, is the place that reportedly 70% of the population are concentrated, and 80% of the Israeli infrastructures. And then to counterattack, Israel has very good defense system, which they call it the radar system, which they call it the Iron Dome, initially made to combat the rockets that Hezbollah was firing from South Lebanon. And then Iran's second missile base is not in Iran itself, but in southern Lebanon, Hezbollah, which I will come later on that later on in my presentation. So attacking Iran is not an easier what they claim, that when the Israelis are saying to the US that, okay, go aside, we will carry out the mission, we will destroy all Iranians' facilities. I think it won't be that easy. Then the recent one, the most of the ace card that Iran has is Hormuz Strait, as all of you mentioned, almost all the speakers, that Iran is threatening to close the Hormuz Strait. And now all the escalation of the threat is somehow circling and hovering around the Hormuz Strait and energy, of course, parallel to the nuclear issue. Now let me go back to my PowerPoint. This we covered, Iran response. Now, President Barack Obama said in November 21 that the actions and policies of the government of Iran threatens the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. Then almost a month later, Iran launched 10 days naval Velayat-e-Navad military exercise in the Persian Gulf. Then the threat came, as you mentioned, Admiral Habibullah Sayyari, who said that blocking the Hormuz Strait will be easier than drinking a glass of water. Of course, a very rhetoric phrase. Then the strongest one came from Vice President Rahimi, the man in the right, who said that if they impose sanctions, Iran's oil exports, then even one drop of oil cannot follow from the Strait of Hormuz. Then still Iran's army being in exercise, the United States and allies, they put the knife on the artery of Iran, sanctioning the oil export and then they're blocking the financial circulation of Iran's finance deals with the foreigners. Oh, I made a mistake, I guess. But when it comes for Persian Gulf, Hormuz Strait, it is not something new. What's known as Carter doctrine, when he says, let our position be absolutely clear, an attempt by any outsider to gain control of the Persian Gulf region and thereby endangering the flow of oil will be regarded as an assault on the vital interest of the United States of America, and such assault will be repelled by any means necessary, including military force. Then 3 decades later, the highest man in his administration, President Obama's administration, Mr. Dempsey, repeating the same, but at the same time says that, yes, Iranians indeed can block this strait. And then former head of CIA and present Defense Secretary, Leon Panetta, repeating the same, says that the United States would not tolerate Iran's closing of this strait. Now, there aren't less people who are looking at a whole scenario as the fight for energy. America is already not only in the Persian Gulf, but also in the Caspian Sea region, which is very rich in energy. But then Iran says that it will close the Hormuz Strait, a strait which is the most important strait in the world, and almost 17% of the world daily oil is passing through. If there are 6 most strategic straits in the world, namely Malacca, Bosphorus, Suez, Bab el-Mandab, and Panama, Hormuz is the most important of all. As I said, 17% of the world oil is passing through. Now, if Iran is blocking that, Iran is shooting on its feet first, and then the others. And then Europeans also, to my mind, will be the losers, who are receiving about 18% of Iran's oil. And which country are the most vulnerable? Of course, those 3 that I have highlighted in red: Italy, Spain, and Greece. Those who are in severe economical crisis right now. With Italy importing 7% of Iran's oil, Spain 6%, and interestingly, when it comes for UK, France, and Germany, the big powers of Europe, combined all are not importing more than 4% of Iran's oil. Then the economical situation in Europe, which to me is one of the main factors that it is indeed making the war less probable. That already Ireland is gone. Ireland has already economically in terrible situation, gone, and it is the best time, I think, if you want to invest there for property. Very in bad shape. Then Portugal, the same story. Then Spain and Greece. And in case of Italy, for example, they say that if Italy is coming down, it will bring down the entire EU. Though they say that it is too big to fall, but at the same time it is too big to be saved. So if Italy is going to have the Greece fate, then it will be much more worse for EU. Greece already, this current year, is having 351 billion euro debt. In fact, it is threatening the entire existence of the EU. Then the Saudis are saying that, okay, if Iranian oil is not there, we will just open one tab and then it is done. Then we will compensate the loss of the Iranian oil. But then the question is that if the tension is escalating and if the Hormuz is getting closed down, even for a short time, Saudi Arabia is not in the position to compensate the shortage of the oil, at least when it comes for Europe. The simple reason for that is they don't have any pipeline. The major Saudi oil is exported via Hormuz Strait. And the only pipeline that they have, which goes through another strategic strait, Bab el-Mandab, its capacity is 5 million barrels per day. And if it is running even with full capacity, it won't be able to compensate the oil export only to Europe, if not other parts of the world. Then coming back to the war, the threats, the rhetorics. Two main cards that USA and Israel have, their ace cards are, first, number one, intelligence and military superiority. Nobody questions that. Second is the superiority in technology, finance, and international organization, and in lobbying. Definitely, Iran is no match to confront USA, Israel, and their allies in these areas. Just to give some examples, the blast that happened close to Tehran some time ago, and then they said that Masoud was behind. And in this mission, one of the main missile men of Iran, General Tehrani Mogaddam, Brigade General, he got killed. And then the reports came out that Masoud was behind. Then, till today, 4 Iranian scientists, nuclear scientists, have been assassinated. Again, they say that it is Masoud. It came to your country as well, to New Delhi and Thailand. Then the cyber war that someone reflected, the Stuxnet worm invaded the Bushehr nuclear plant, and then the most recent one, virus, attacked Iran's oil ministry. Then, of course, in the international organizations, also they have the upper hand. But the main Iran's failure, when it comes for the natural sources of power, Iran is blessed because of its geography, which it gives Iran a geostrategic position, and then because of the natural resources. I wonder if Iran hadn't these two sources of power, what Iran really could and what Iran today had to say. But when it comes for that, I have highlighted as red. When it comes for the natural sources of the power, the national image that Iran is giving, Iran definitely is laying behind. And then the public support that Iran can gain both inside and outside the country, it is really questionable. To analyze it, I have made it in 4 levels: Iran itself, and then Iran's neighbor, Arab Spring, which somehow Ambassador Singh very shortly he just referred to, which is not covered much in the media even, and then the external players, the big powers. Iran's ace cards. I'm just not getting into detail, already we discussed it a lot. Then one card that Iran has, and this one also is not widely discussed, is that in case of invading Iran, Iran has...
Sorry, you might like to go back to that because there may be something different.
It's nothing, something, because already missile, it's widely covered. Just what I said in the beginning, the capability that Iran out of necessity had to obtain, varieties of missiles. You can go to the next one, sir. And then another card that Iran has, and this one also is not widely discussed. If Iran is invaded, doesn't matter if by air or by missile, if Iran is going to lose all its infrastructures, Iran has also this card to play, and this is the last option, I guess, for Iran. And that is to target the oil export hubs, both in Persian Gulf and even in Caucasus, though it is very less probable, but on the excuse that America has bases there. If they really threatened Iran's existence, I think Iran can play this card as well and target at least 4 out of 6 choke points. When it comes for military, as again it was covered, and I will not pause much here, Iran has 3 Kilo class submarines, Russian-made. And then briefly, one of the speakers pointed to those small submarines. In Iran, they call it Nahang, which means whale, very small. It can carry 4 to 4 torpedo and missile as well, and apparently ideal to maneuver in the shallow waters of Hormuz Straits, while the big submarines cannot. The numbers, we don't know. Then Iran claims that it can drone 2 tankers and block the 54-kilometer wide Hormuz Strait. Reportedly, it is not that much practical. Then the main threat, one of the main threats, is laying mines. Reportedly, Iran has 5,000 of them and different and varieties of them, which is the major threat. Fast boat already, it was discussed. And then the last one of the last choices that Iran has is human torpedo, just as a last resort to attack the enemy's targets and navies by kamikaze, by suiciding. Besides this military, Iran has 2 floating navies, I call it, in the Middle East, namely Hamas in Gaza, in Palestine, and Ismail Haniyeh, the leader, which recently has distanced itself from Iran, apparently to gain the Qataris' petrodollars. However, its junior ranks are saying that they will not leave Iran aside alone if Israelis are going to attack Iran. But the legality of Hezbollah in South Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah, it's not questionable. As when in 2006, when Israeli attacked South Lebanon, it was Iran which rebuilt again the destroyed regions. War on terror, Afghanistan. Iran has 2 cards of Afghanistan and Iraq as well. USA ousted 2 major immediate Sunni enemies of Iran, Iraq Saddam Hussein and Afghanistan Taliban. USA destroyed these 2 anti-Iranians, but became at the same time the immediate neighbor of Iran. We know that the bomb blasts are the order of the day in Kabul and Baghdad, so these 2 countries are not stable yet. In December 2001, after 9 years' war, USA pulled out its troops. And then it is doing the same in Afghanistan. By 2014, all the US troops are supposed to leave Afghanistan. So the outcome of almost a decade war on terror, 225,000 lives have been lost, and then the cost of the war, $4 trillion. Now the question is that, really, in reality, are American taxpayers ready to pay for another war? Personally, I think not. When it comes for Afghanistan, it's true that Osama bin Laden is no more. And here I would like to say that Iran's positive rules here, it's hardly been debated again in this part, that Iran is acting as a buffer zone between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the rest of the world. Nowhere this positive side of Iran has been mentioned. Maybe it is not a choice for Iran to do so, but being as a sworn enemies of Wahhabis and Sunni elements of Pakistan and Afghanistan, Iran is indeed preventing the on-land expansion of terrorism to the rest of the world. And hardly you can find it in the media, stressing upon this positive fact. But then, as someone mentioned again, since the enemy of my enemy could be my friend, then Iran can tie in rainy days with Taliban and Al-Qaeda even. And if its existence is questioned. So Iran has these two parts of Iraq and Afghanistan. In Iraq, at present scenario, present time, the things are going in Iran's favor. Nouri al-Maliki, the prime minister, the Shiite prime minister of Iraq, he has nothing against Iran. In fact, his government is closing down the Mujahideen-e-Khalq camp in Iraq. That is the sole opposition group to Iranian regime which is armed. Now, Iraqi government is closing down the camp and very much cooperating with Iran. Worse than al-Maliki, the man below with the scary face, is Sadr. I'm sure you have seen on the news and media. He is heading the Mahdi militia. It's just attached to capital of Iraq, Baghdad, the Sadr city. And when they were celebrating in the American troops' departure from Iraq, Sadr, via the video and internet, addressed his own followers in Sadr cities from Iran. He was, and he is now in Qom, living in Iran. Several times his Mahdi militia, they have fought with American troops. And if needed, I think Iran has the ability again to, gain their support and use them against the American targets. Then Arab Spring. I hardly believe that without Arab Spring being commenced, Iran's navy could cross the Suez Channel for the first time after the revolution. And when Mubarak was gone, Iran's navy crossed the Suez Canal. By saying this, I would like to say that among 6 recently revolted Arab countries of Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and Bahrain, Islamic parties are gaining ground, at least in 3 of them. And that is, fortunately or unfortunately, is the reality, and I interpret it for the short-term interest of Iran. So geopolitical changes in the Arab world and the Arab Spring is in Iranian interest. In Tunisia, for example, where all started, and Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali, after 23 years, fled to Saudi Arabia. Now, Islamic Party of Al-Nahda won the parliamentary election. Then the president of Tunisia, who was when he was young, he traveled to India. He was interested to discover the Gandhiji's peaceful nature. He says that he says that he's supporting the Iranian nuclear peaceful energy plans and programs, while the head of Al-Nahda party saying that I am not another Khomeini, but definitely Islamic parties are much more closer, or will be more closer to Iranian regime than to the USA and allies. Then in Morocco it is the same. The Justice and Development Party, which is the softer version of Ikhwanul Muslimin, they also won the election. They are copying Turkey, apparently very moderate Islamists, but they are also winning the ground. And for the first time in the history of Morocco, now the prime minister is from this party. Egypt, the same story. The final result will come out in June 21st. So if Mohammed Morsi from Ikhwanul Muslimin is emerging as the president of the new Egypt, don't surprise. It is the same scenario in Libya. The man who led the rebellion, the Abdul Hakim Belhaj, he is the man now in charge of the security of Tripoli. And he is suing the British government, the government of Blair. Under his government, Belhaj of Libya is suing Jacques Rowe, saying that they delivered him to Gaddafi and Gaddafi tortured him. By saying this, I want to say that in Libya also, the Islamists are gaining ground, with the exception of Syria. The Syrian development is not in the interest of Iran. In Bahrain, at the other side of Hormuz Strait, the development, if Iran wants really, can use this card, either the card of Al-Wefaq Shiite, which are based in Al-Wefaq Party, that is the only organized party and opposition to Al Hamad dynasty. In Yemen, in northern Yemen, Houthis, they are Shiite, and reportedly Iran is arming them. So if Iran is willing, can use that card as well. And you know that the 5th Fleet Navies of USA is stationed in Bahrain. So the bottom line of all I said on Arab Spring, to my mind, is in favor of Iran. Then the balance of the power in the international arena. China and Russia, we know that they are opposing the new sanctions against Iran. The collapses of the USSR and emergence of China, and of course India, has already defined the new multipolar world order. Russians have already lost Iraq, Libya, and are losing Syria also. It is less probable that they will accompany the Americans' agenda, as Iran's and Russian interest is to block the USA and NATO's advancement in the region, whether it is in Central Asia or in the Persian Gulf. Because of the geopolitical calculation, Beijing, Tehran, and Moscow have come closer to each other, unlike of any time. They are apparently and reportedly are helping Iran to develop its nuclear and missile technology. Then, of course, the energy issue. We know that the Chinese are importing a lot of their oil from the Persian Gulf countries. About 50% of Chinese oil comes from the Middle East, while 22% is coming from Asia, from Africa. So it is very less probable that Chinese at the end, despite the fact that they are reducing their oil import from Iran, to my mind it is very less probable that at the end they will cut all their oil imports from Iran. And the most important of all, I think China as a strategic competitor to USA, sooner or later will have no option but to develop and to follow a new comprehensive doctrine to confront the USA's advancement in the region. I have put it as a question. Till today, as yesterday we were discussing, I don't understand, or as far as I know, I would like Ambassador Singh, if can comment on that, that if India has any particular doctrine toward the region, toward the Central Asia, so far as I am digging, I am finding nothing that comprehensive whether what is the stance of India vis-à-vis Iran, vis-à-vis Central Asia. While Chinese are taking the oil from the Persian Gulf or from Caspian Sea, what India is doing. The only pipeline on the table, IPI, it is, I guess, if I'm not mistaken, for more than 2 decades, but it's still unknown. So the bottom line of the recent developments, India is saying unofficially that we are reducing the oil import from Iran. Officially, as far as I know, no statement has been issued, but that is the reality, that India is somehow trying to maintain the balance, reduce a bit of oil import from Iran, at the same time be positive toward the Hillary Clinton, the USA pressure, and somehow maintain the balance. But what is the clear cut of Indian stance? Honestly speaking, till today I have not understood. Well, but does it affect really the bilateral relation if India is somehow behaving vague or trying to satisfy both sides? India twice has voted against Iran in IAEA, 2005 and 2009. But to my mind, it is not distancing two nations. And it is the case when it comes for Indian military and diplomatic ties with the West, with the Israel. India launched the Israeli spy satellite in 2008. But that also, to my mind, is not affecting the relationships. When it comes for people, Iranians' historical memory has always viewed India as a peaceful and friendly nation. It was there, and it will be there. Iranian regime and people would continue to perceive India as a friendly country because of the culture, history that we all know. Why? Especially when it comes for Iranian regime that cannot pull out from negotiation table or to challenge India much. Very simple. Because Iran has no reliable friend, big friend, powerful friend in the international arena. Look at Iran's friend. Who is at the Iranian side? Chinese? Maybe. Russians? Let me tell you that the Iranians, they don't have trust at all on Russians. They think that Russians can betray them any moment because of the history, because of the Caspian Sea, because they are utilizing their power to get more of the Caspian Sea and this historical background, and also Iranians are not trusting Russians at all. But India could be a great friend of Iran. But so far till today, we have not seen a big development in this regard between two countries. On the other hand, through that, India needs Iran oil, but very much Iran needs India's refined oil. If I am wrong, please one of you correct me. I think India is the second exporter of refined oil to Iran. So it is a very crucial fact. Tehran will not and cannot distance itself from New Delhi. As I said, because Iran has very less powerful and influential friends. Consequently, and despite Iranian rhetoric, Tehran will not move away from New Delhi. And when it comes for IPI pipeline, let me assure you, it will be the same case. Iran will not move from the negotiation table. If one day it is happening, it is, as I said, this is, I think, for 2 decades that it is prolonging and prolonging. Conclusion. Even a military successful attack from Israel's point of view will only delay Iran's nuclear program for a few years. To eliminate all Iranian nuclear elements, USA and allies must launch massive air or land strikes. Again, a full-scale war and total destruction of Iran is in the interest of no one, even Israel. It would be fanning the flame in the Middle East. But what if it happens? As NATO attacked Serbia and Serbian forces in Kosovo, and the USA and its allies invaded Iraq, but both examples lacked UN Security Council approval. Thus, if Israel attacks Iran, not only the world here, the West, won't condemn Israel, but also USA will be definitely dragged into the war to support Israel against its war with Iran. Considering the present world order and financial crisis, Iran's internal politics, Middle East geopolitics, and Arab Spring, as well as Iran, Israel, USA military and non-military ace cards, the war against Iran is not probable. Only non-state, uncalculated, and unexpected irrational moves and decisions of a group or individuals would trigger the war, like Bush administration and invasion of Iraq, when they prepared the public before launching their invasion. In case of a military confrontation in the Middle East, which is unstable than ever, if the West, which is in bad fiscal time, wage a war against Iran, it would hurt its economy first. In return, if Iran responds to military strikes of the West too little, it would lose face. And if it responds too much, Iran would lose head. There is no alternative ready to install regime in Iran, even if the current regime is ousted. In the eve of regime destruction, vengeful, armed, and resourceful groups would remain scattered all over Iran, who would tie, as I mentioned earlier, with any anti-Western groups, such as extremist elements of Pakistan and Afghanistan, against the common enemy, USA. Presently and pragmatically, to my mind, war is in the interest of none of the players. However, I would like to draw your attention to the last part. Regarding this part and then the last part. Regarding Baghdad nuclear summit of 5+1, the negotiations with Iran, it is more likely, this time I say it more positive, that smart sanctions and compromise, the combination of both would work and would solve Iran's controversial nuclear crisis. On nuclear crisis, Iranians are united. Let me tell you here that whether inside Iran, they are nationalists, they are modern, cold and westernized, Armenians, Jews, Muslims, all that are leaving Iran. When it comes for the nuclear issue, they are all united. And any attack on Iran, I think, will rather unite different segments with different views within the Iran. Those who are even opposing the regime, at this point, I think they will not stay idle, and probably they will support Iran and even will go to war if it is happening. So, as I said, any attack on Iran would silence the Iranian reformists, as the regime, with the excuse of national security and combating the enemy's regime change policy, will suppress the reformists more than ever. I'm sure Europe and America is not wanting this scenario. They don't want definitely to kill all the reformists in Iran. But what is threatening Iran, this one I wanted to draw your attention. What is threatening Iranian regime the most is not Israeli or USA missiles and their short-term threats, but its own internal politics and people in the long run. It is more probable that Iranian regime via compromise would succeed on its nuclear negotiations, escaping the war. But in the long run, and without commencing reforms, the regime would gradually commit suicide at home. Thank you.